Hey guys, it's Tim Miller. My dark horse prediction for 2025 is that Donald Trump has a health event. And I think that this is inevitable based on the actuarial tables to happen during his presidency because, Donald Trump's machismo and his strength is such an important part of his political brand. This was always, I think, a vulnerability of his in this campaign, but because we live in the darkest timeline, we did not end up in a situation where his fragility as an elderly man came to the fore in a way that I wish it had. In fact, the opposite was the case because of that fucking awful idiot kid that tried to kill him. It ended up kind of accentuating his strengths when he stood up after that assassination attempt. And so, frankly, I think it's pretty obvious that that young man actually helped Trump. I don't actually know that his attempt was to hurt Trump, really. He seems like a troubled young man that was going to try to shoot anybody, but that actually helped Trump. But there was a counter timeline in the multiverse where Trump did what Hillary did in 2016 and had a fall, or, had some other health event that you have as a 78-year-old man who doesn't exactly eat healthy. Sorry, Maha. But that didn't happen. But I think that that is going to come at some point in the next 4 years. I think it'll probably come in 2025. And that will have real ramifications because this J.D. Vance situation, with J.D. Vance as the kind of heir apparent, if Donald Trump starts to become more frail and look more frail and sound more frail, I think that there will potentially be knives out for J.D. Vance. There'll be posturing inside MAGA world as an alternative tries to emerge. Or maybe there'll be a coalescing from the oligarch class, from Musk and Thiel and Andreessen and those guys around J.D. Vance to try to empower him. I think that there will be some very real, what would it be called? Kremlinology, some very real gossip, drama, Shakespearean drama, maybe is the right phrase, in the White House around that succession plan. The first time there's a hint of Donald Trump's human weakness that we all have. So there you go. There's my prediction for 2025.
My prediction for 2025, beyond things getting pretty bleak pretty quickly. It's not really a prediction, kind of there. I predict the government will shut down. Again, not going out on much of a limb here. Tightly divided House. Trump shut down the government when he was president for the first time. But I think this time around it's going to be over something crazy and weird. Like, we're funding too much, biomedical research or something like that. And everyone's like, why would you shut down the government over this? And Trump will, have some excuse. And we will be in it for quite a bit of time because right now no one really seems to be all that committed to keeping the government open on the certain side of the aisle. So yeah, that's my prediction for 2025 on the politics front. Hoping I'm wrong. Probably I'm going to be right, though.
So my dark horse prediction for 2025 is that Donald Trump is going to pardon New York Mayor Eric Adams. You may think that's a little weird because Eric Adams is a Democrat, but let me explain to you why this is going to happen. Eric Adams has been indicted for basically doing favors in exchange for bribes from various financial interests. Why would Donald Trump pardon a Democrat? The reason is Donald Trump is not fundamentally a Republican. Donald Trump is fundamentally a criminal. And so he loves criminals, like white-collar criminals like himself. He hates the deep state, the weaponized law enforcement. So he sympathizes with guys who have been convicted by law enforcement, by the justice system. Donald Trump already did this. In his first term, he commuted the sentence of Rod Blagojevich, the former governor of Illinois, who basically sold Barack Obama's Senate seat. Trump commuted his sentence, and so he's going to do it again. He's looking for somebody, and he's going to choose Eric Adams. And one of the reasons he's going to choose Eric Adams is that Eric Adams is trolling hard. He's signaling that he is with Donald Trump on immigration. Donald Trump already said nice things about Eric Adams, that Eric Adams got in trouble with law enforcement. The reason why he got prosecuted is because Eric Adams said that we needed to crack down on all the migrants in New York City. right? So he's already endeared himself to Trump, and he's increasing his signals to Trump that he's with him on that issue. So Trump is going to pardon Eric Adams and say that Eric Adams is a victim of the deep state because Eric Adams stood up for America against these evil migrants. I don't think Adams needs to do anything more than he's already doing, which is after Trump won the election, Adams basically said he's with Trump on the deportations. A lot of Democrats obviously saying we're not going to cooperate. Eric Adams says, I'm going to help you get these criminals out of New York. If any other Democrats who have committed crimes want to get in line, hint, hint, Bob Menendez, I would move quickly because there's a limited number of these, bipartisan pardons and commutations for corrupt Democrats. I don't think Trump's going to do a whole lot of them. I'd say Eric Adams is at the front of the line, and if you want to get one, you better move.
In 2025, I think it's going to become more clear to everybody that Mark Cuban is going to be running for president. I think it's pretty clear that Mark Cuban is the best answer to Trump. He is a pro-democracy populist. He was vigorously anti-Trump over the course of the last 4 years. And like Trump, he comes with all sorts of built-in cultural memory. He's been with us since Shark Tank, since he bought the Dallas Mavericks. He's part of America's cultural furniture, not in the same way that Trump was, because Trump had been around for 40 years, but Cuban's been around. He's been around for a while, and he codes as authentic. And that is now what everybody wants from their politicians. They don't want somebody who's going to build coalitions and pass bipartisan bills about infrastructure and boring shit like that. They just want somebody who's authentic. And Mark Cuban has a lot of authenticity. And I don't know if you've noticed, but what he's been doing with himself is he has stood up a company called Cost Plus Drugs. It even has his name on it. Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drug Company. And the whole idea is for him to drive huge savings for consumers on prescription drugs. I cannot think of a single better campaign rationale for somebody running for president in 2028 than I'm the guy who is actually in the process of fixing healthcare. That will be a powerful, powerful thing to run on. Mark Cuban will have built a business doing exactly that. And I think, again, everybody who's paying attention should already understand what he's positioning himself to do. I think over the course of the next year, it's going to become clear to everybody.
My 2025 prediction is don't get too comfortable with all of these cabinet choices that Trump has made, because there are going to be firings and there are going to be resignations before the end of the year. Trump is sort of like our Hugo Chavez. Chavez was the strongman leader of Venezuela, and he used to have these televised sessions where he would entertain his people. He would sing, he would tell stories, he would tell lies, and he would usually fire someone. Because, something would be going wrong in the country. And of course, Chavez could never be the one responsible. So he'd fire someone. And as we saw in the first Trump administration, he fired people all the time and usually without any notice, like via tweet. I guess now it'll be via Truth Social post. But it's pretty inevitable that some of these people will find out that they don't have jobs, when they wake up in the morning because something has gone wrong that is Trump's fault, but they have to be the fall guy or gal. I think it would probably be RFK Jr. He's so volatile and crazy, and so is Trump, that combination seems like it's a little unstable, kind of like a, chemistry experiment.
My prediction for 2025 is that two members of Congress will get into a physical altercation that goes beyond what we've seen in the past couple of years. I think this will happen, or has a high likelihood of happening, because if you recall when the 118th Congress started, there was a dust up on the floor. Mike Rogers rushed at Matt Gaetz during the fight over the speakership, and he had to be held back. We saw it in a Senate hearing when Mark Wayne Mullen almost got into a fist fight with head of the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien. And there were multiple other points, too, behind closed doors in which members got in each other's faces. There was another incident on the House floor in which Derek Van Orden pressed up against Matt Gaetz and called him Tubby. That was, again, over fights around the speakership. And there was just a lot of these boiling over moments. Matt Gaetz was at the center of them, and he won't be in Congress. But part of why they didn't escalate is because he's actually very cool-headed in those situations. He's just a huge troll and taunts them and provokes them. There's going to be a lot of issues where there are Democrats who think if this happens, it is the end of the world, and Republicans who think if this doesn't happen, it is the end of the world. And that kind of intensity around everything with these boiling tempers is going to lead to a lot of confrontations in public view. In addition to that, there are a lot of contentious issues in Congress this coming year that could lead to confrontations like this. For example, there's going to be multiple funding fights on the floor. There's going to be all these kinds of authorizations that they have to do, and when you have these stubborn people who refuse to bend, it's going to be really hard, especially in such a thin majority. For the first few months of the year, Republicans can only lose one seat. So everything becomes super important. Even the simplest things become really, really important. When they fill those seats, it'll grow a little bit, but it'll be just as tense as it was for the past 2 years. Another component of that is the work schedule. We've already seen John Thune release the Senate schedule. He's going to have them in session all the way through March without a break. These people all have gigantic egos, and they all get really upset when they have to be around each other for too long. And what he's outlined is one of the longest work stretches we've seen in a long time, working on Fridays. The Senate doesn't like to work on Friday. So they're not going to be able to do the things they want, whether it's campaigning or going back home for some of the members who live in maybe further away states. And so it's going to be really, really tense period. In addition to that, there's the element of chaos. Donald Trump behaves very erratically, and he'll sometimes align with someone who maybe isn't a traditional Republican. And that can really upset people who maybe have a pet project that gets shelved. They've got to deal with the tax bill too. And one of those things is you have these kind of blue state Republicans who want these tax deductions for state and local. It's called SALT deductions, brought back into it. It was eliminated under Trump. And they want to bring it back. And that's an intense thing because that depends on how they campaign, if they're able to get that for their constituents. And they're also vital to the House majority. There's all these factors that are going to lead to boiling over tempers, and the egos are higher than they've ever been. The tempers are shorter than they've ever been. And so I just think that we've reached a point where we almost had fistfights multiple times in very public view. And it's always the men involved in Congress. And there's a pretty strong chance that we're going to see more of these. And it's only going to take one person doing something to push it over the edge.
My dark horse prediction for 2025 is that next year we are going to see finally the popping of the AI bubble. So as Ed Zitron points out in various installments of his excellent newsletter, AI companies have overpromised and underdelivered on the key capabilities of their products for quite a while. They have yet to produce a killer app that, just meets a really keenly felt need in the market. There's not really a strong business case for any of the AI applications right now, except to managers. There's not value right now to consumers. And AI products like ChatGPT simply cannot resolve the problem of hallucinations, by which they introduce falsehood that's just totally manufactured into their results in response to prompts. That's simply not a problem that can be resolved, given the kind of models that they are, which are predictive. The amount of available raw training data is rapidly diminishing. These applications and models need to be trained on essentially human language, and finding untapped reserves of human language online has become increasingly difficult, especially given the way that so much of the internet is starting to fill up with AI generated content from grifters and people looking to make a quick buck on the technology. And when AI models are trained on data that other AI models have produced, it rapidly corrupts their results. It's this sort of cannibalism just very quickly untethers them from reality almost completely. So my dark horse prediction for 2025 is that there's going to be a steep fall off in investor interest in the sector. There are going to be mass layoffs, and we're going to see a sort of gradual retracting of useless AI-based applications across the internet, with the most egregious one, when it comes to my life online anyway, being the use of AI to top Google search results. It's just totally useless to me. But that's my dark horse prediction. My actual expectation for what's going to happen next year is closer to what a very good friend of mine suggests is going to happen, which is that these problems are going to remain with AI applications, but because there's already been so much money sunk into these things, they're going to persist, and our expectations and standards are just going to fall to match the terrible level at which AI generated text and text responses, search queries, all kinds of things, the terrible level that those things have fallen to, that is just going to become our new expectation. And we're simply going to see a new vector of sort of ongoing enshittification of the internet.
So my prediction is, I think the Silicon Valley MAGA bromance is going to hit the skids pretty soon. There is already discussion underway about whether or not President-elect Trump is a lame duck. Steve Bannon said over the weekend, hey, how does everybody feel about Trump in 2028? There are rumors going around about how Donald Trump could run again as J.D. Vance's VP, but then really be the president. We all know that this is a long-standing conversation about Trump thinking he might be entitled to a third term. I don't know how the tech bros who put J.D. Vance in the VP slot or helped Don Trump himself become president again with loads and loads and loads of money feel about the idea of him running again at 82. So it's really important to remember that J.D. Vance is their guy. He is one of them. They lobbied really hard for him to get the VP slot. Peter Thiel is his mentor. David Sachs, Mark Andreessen, Jacob Hellberg, Ben Horowitz, the list goes on, Elon Musk. They gave money, tons of it, to make sure that Vance was VP. In this campaign, they won over Don Jr. Don Jr. and Eric Trump and Tucker Carlson went to Trump as well on the other side, on the sort of family MAGA side, and said, yes, it's true. You should pick him. He's one of us. Tucker even said, if you pick somebody that from the establishment, someone like Marco Rubio or Doug Burgum, that the deep state likes better, they will have you assassinated in order for this vice president to succeed you. So he picks Vance, the money flows in. David Sachs gets introduced to Don Jr. by J.D. Vance. Life is good for everybody. Now Elon is kind of co-presidenting and everyone's having a great time. But I think the fact that this lame duck question is going to come up soon is going to cause some tension. And I don't know that these guys are really down with the idea of Trump forever. So if there is any evidence that this 78-year-old man, and nature has its way with all of us, particularly when we're 78 and older, as we've just seen with Joe Biden, if there's any visible evidence that he gets sick, even if it's a small illness, has a health episode, is slowing down. He was captured on video slurring many times during this campaign. If there's anything like that, I think they're going to consolidate around Vance and start pushing for him to be the heir apparent without competition from a Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. This is going to make Donald Trump Jr. and others unhappy. Donald Trump himself, Sr., the president. And so I do think that with these big personalities and these big egos and a lot of cross pressures, things that Donald Trump as president will do or say or decide that the tech bros don't agree with is the makings for some love lost. And I think that that'll be happening sooner than we see it in public. So everyone is coming around the world and in corporate America. If they weren't supportive of Trump in 16 or 20, or they were, but not so energetically, everyone is making sure that Donald Trump knows through big, donations to the inaugural committee, et cetera, that they are on board, and that they are just amazed by his power and his comeback. And that's the way they want him to feel for now. They are afraid of getting punished if they don't come to heel and come to the table. But I think this other set of the most powerful people, like Musk, really don't have to answer to Trump. And if they see him starting to slip, the presidency is chaotic, things are not as great as they feel now, prices of groceries are not going down, Trump is erratic, and there is this sort of infighting and cross pressure. I don't think that these people stay in Trump's camp and fear him forever. I think there's a set of people who are more powerful, and will be trying to look to replace Trump with JD Vance.
My dark horse prediction for 2025 is that we are going to see a lot more MAGA infighting than certainly we saw in the first term, and maybe even than people are expecting right now. I think back when Donald Trump was first president, most of the kind of intra-Republican clashing was between people who supported him and kind of the old guard Republicans. What it meant to be MAGA was basically just nothing more or less than just that you were with Donald Trump no matter what, and anything that had to do with policy kind of came very secondary to that, and frequently didn't come up at all, because most of the kind of Republican policy thinking was still the Republican policy thinking that had existed before. This time around, though, it's very different. There are a lot more people who are kind of in the MAGA coalition who have a lot of policy skin in the game, and a lot of real rifts and deep disagreements under the surface that are all kind of being papered over right now. And it goes for a lot of different issues. You look at something like, what America's role is going to be in the world. And you see Donald Trump appointing a guy like Marco Rubio to be his Secretary of State, someone who is, much more hawkish, albeit in kind of a new look kind of way. He's kind of wishy-washy on Ukraine, very hawkish on China, versus people, a lot of people in the coalition who are super dovish, anti-war kind of across the board. Don't want to see us getting into conflict with Russia. Also don't want to see us getting in any kind of conflict with China. See basically any kind of escalations in the Middle East as a problem. There are going to be real crises that will crop up, and rifts within the coalition on how to respond to that. Donald Trump will find himself pulled different ways. This goes for a lot of different things. I mean, you look at Donald Trump's nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. To run Health and Human Services. When you hear Donald Trump talk about what that's going to look like, especially when it comes to things like vaccine approvals, Donald Trump will say, well, look, I support the polio vaccine. I think the polio vaccine is really important. I saw a lot of what polio could do to people when I was young. But what RFK is going to do when he gets in there is just kind of like look at all the data and make sure everything's ship shape. Meanwhile, you have a guy in RFK who has been spending the last, decades of his life totally convinced that vaccines like the polio vaccine are wreaking havoc on the world's population. I mean, he is not polio ambiguous. He's not polio skeptical. He's anti these vaccines. So we're going to have to see what that sort of thing looks like in practice. And you can go down the line. Spending will be interesting, with Elon Musk wanting to slash trillions in spending. You have basically this whole kind of billionaire class that's baked in now, that have kind of captured Trump's interest. Guys like Elon Musk, guys like Vivek Ramaswamy, who Trump is obviously very intrigued by, very glad to have on the team. But their policy program is very different from a guy like JD Vance, who a lot of the kind of old school, it's funny to even talk that way, old school quote unquote MAGA heads, guys like Steve Bannon, the real populist crowd, the ideas that these guys are bringing to the table in terms of like a real sort of class war, anti wealthy elites sort of project is very different from the sort of like based deregulation / slashing government spending that guys like Elon Musk and Vivek want to see happen. So there's all kinds of different fault lines under the surface here. Trump's going to have to be making calls on all these things. Republicans will be in power across Washington. There will be a lot of decisions to be made, a lot of hard decisions to be made. And I think you're going to see a lot of these fights bubbling up in the open in a way that you rarely saw during the first term, again, within Donald Trump's coalition.
So my prediction, I've got a downer prediction. I'm not sure how dark everybody else is getting here, but if JVL's on this video, it's probably pretty dark. My prediction is that we're going to see a fairly nasty wave of social violence that we have not seen since the 1970s in this country, and I think it's a combination of social media bringing people together, and really, the reaction to the killing of the United Healthcare CEO has been pretty disturbing to me, and I think it's probably not a great thing that the killer is being lionized in certain small but still very vocal circles. This is one of the reasons why I suggested folks pick up How We Got Here, the 70s, David Frum's book, because it is a very thorough look at the ways in which violence, kind of racked regular civil society in America. So what form this violence will take, hard to say. I don't know. It could be anything from, riots and protests to targeted killings or bombings. Things got weird in the 1970s. I think things are about to get weird again. And I'm not looking forward to it. As to what specifically will kick off this wave of violence, I don't know. I mean, look, here's the thing. America has had no shortage of mass violence in recent years, right? You look at the mass shootings, school shootings, things like that. But those are all crazy people. Those are all crazy people who tend to have their own personal issues. I do think that if we get into a wave of violence around social issues, it's going to have to do with frustrations about the role that the wealthy are playing in government and in business. And I do think that, there's a lot of frustration, not specifically aimed even at the fact that CEOs exist or that billionaires have a big role in society. That has always been the case. People, I don't think anybody's shocked that rich people have a lot of say and influence in policy. But I do think what has gotten under people's skin in a very real way is the expansion of bureaucracy and the ways in which faceless, apparatchiks applying random diktats can kind of destroy your life, either through denial of healthcare services or getting somebody fired for something they said. I think a lot of things are kind of coming together in a very real and bad way. And it only takes a couple of lunatics, and there are no shortage of lunatics in a country as large as ours, to make things very hairy for everyone.
Okay, my prediction is that there will be a minimum of 3 different Republican House speakers. I think Johnson gets ousted early by President Elon being annoyed that Johnson wants to keep the government going. And we end up going through multiple cycles of speakers. And I think it's my prediction is sort of couched in a larger prediction of how Republicans are going to spend this time in control, cannibalizing one another. The Republicans have had this nice little period between when Donald Trump was elected and when Donald Trump actually has to govern, where they've spent their time gloating. But you know what? Governing is hard, and it often requires serious people, and those are going to be in short supply. And if Democrats sort of sit back and don't bail Republicans out, Republicans will cannibalize each other over the next couple of years. And it is my prediction, and I guess ultimately a little bit my hope. It is my prediction that they will govern poorly and cannibalize themselves. It is my hope that the American people will see that for what it is and understand that these people are not to be trusted with the power of our government. I think we end up with one of these Hail Mary outside of Congress speakers like Elon or Vivek Ramaswamy, that one of them becomes Speaker of the House and that Republicans rue the day they celebrated these types of people as great additions to the Republican Party.